Hello and welcome to the Extraordinarium Show. You're listening to medium and exorcist Ralph Keaton. The following podcast is taken from the Exorcist Diaries. In today's show, we'll be talking to one of our experts, Steve Hemingway. I want to talk about this program is, I've written down here, how do we take steps to protect our home or people in it? Since meeting you, I've seen things in a different light when it comes to prayers and things like this, because whenever I've gone in before, because of the way I work, mine's more on a spiritual level. I used to use holy water and stuff, but I was relying on the people, their faith. So I would, rather than me trying to do the blessings and that, I would just say, look, you believe in this, here's some holy water, here's some stuff, do this yourself. And I would explain the processes and just kind of hope they would deal with it and get on with it, because my route would...
arbitrating it in a way, aren't you? You know,
yeah,
it's always better for them to do it, if it's faith-wise, non-faith or whatever, because it boils back down to being in control of where you live and your life. You know, you wouldn't just let somebody walk all over you. You know, you wouldn't let... You might do for so long, and human nature is to sort of stand up and say, no, that's not happening no more, you know.
Yeah.
But with these particular things, it's not like an argument falling out with somebody. A lot of these, even early signs happen, you're either on your own, or you're with somebody that can't, like a small child that can't verify it. It can look like a coincidence more often than not.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And some of them things that happen if you're on your own, and myself now, we're used to things and that, but if I was sat there and all of a sudden my armchair lifted up or something slid across my floor on its own, I'd be a bit like, hang on a minute, I'd be a bit on edge, you know.
Yeah.
I'd know what to do, but if I didn't know what to do, then that's going to build and build then. once you know, you physically see something happening, or you come across, you know, the cold spots and things, or regular things happening, that it's a real way of changing people as well. It's, you know, it brings I think a lot of time when you look at classic hauntings, or poltergeist activity, even like your Enfields and all these kind of places, majority are like single parent, or the family is in dire straits, or so they're already at rock bottom, or they're living on scraping by and, you know, living on rock bottom. They seem to be always worst cases for me.
Yeah.
If it's somebody who's well-rounded, they're successful, they're doing this, they're doing that, and blah blah blah, they don't seem to ever. They might get the initial start things, but it never seems to go much further, unless it's invited, you know. But it seems people that are already on that, like, sort of negative in a way. The surroundings are negative, the environment, the lifestyles, everything is negative. Then it's kind of an open field, isn't it?
You're right, actually, because environment is a big thing, you know. I've done some stuff up in the northeast where low income, there's not much job prospects, but actually the housing is those long terrace rows. In fact, some of them have had toilets still in the backyard and stuff. And so when you go in to see these people, they are already on a low ebb anyway. And you're right, and it affects them far more. Because they're already, I don't want to use the words, they're on a low ebb is the way I want to put it, because they're acceptant of things. Well, it's just part of my life, I can't get out of this, I can't, and you know, and so when I go into those ones, I find sometimes they're the more fulfilling ones, because I get in and I go, right, here we go, look, let's do this, and it's like a little bit of hope, a little bit of goodness, because they do look at you as though you can help. You know, not saying a saviour as such, but certainly you can look at you and go, you know a solution, can you come and help?
I think a lot of it as well is that you're actually interested in them and interested in their lives.
Yeah.
And that that everybody's got a purpose. You might be at that point where you don't think you've got a purpose, or your day's routine and it's mundane and it just goes on, and you never get you're not getting your head above water and stuff like that. I think that's I always find them cases that they seem to be the ones that have, shall we say, a lot more negative connotations to them than just basic hauntings. But you see, underneath all that, you see really strong people.
Yeah.
Because to actually live through something that's horrific, day to day, I imagine, you're in an incident and something happens and you see an horrific thing, it's a flash of what you see and that's it. But if you're in a house that's got something really negative in it, it's 24/7. 24/7, because if you're not physically seeing it or hearing it, you're thinking about it, or it's invading in your thoughts, or it's a constant struggle. But you see like people there, and it's like it's a resilience. They've had that resilience because of the situation that they're in, and then once they get to understanding that this thing can go, it will go, but you're going to have to do it. You see that come through, and sometimes it kind of lifts people just over that line, doesn't it? And there's a few families that I've worked with at past that they've been down and out, but not now. I had a really interesting case. That doll case were really interesting the minute we took that doll out.
Yeah.
I'll not go into any details of case or anything, but we took the doll out. It were a young family. He'd lost his job 6 months prior, blah, all these things tripping into like destitution and then it came about that it was this doll. We removed the doll, and within 3 days the guy got offered a job, started work. Some other things just dropped into play as though they'd been stopped or blocked. And that's another thing as well that I think people don't realise, especially teams and stuff that go in, is there's other things going off, not just the haunting.
Yes.
Yes. And it kind of, if it's a negative thing, it starts impacting into all these different areas, your work, your health, your family, your happiness, and it's a kind of it's just this gradual bombardment of taking it, destroying it.
Yeah.
But that's another show.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, we've got. You see, the thing about what we're doing, we've got the doll thing is another huge thing. I think that's probably a couple of shows worth of things that we're going to talk about with the doll cases we've come across.
Yeah.
But
especially the one you've got with teeth.
Yes.
With real teeth.
Still got it here. With the little one with the real teeth that was in the film. Yeah, I know. I'm doing some research on it. I've still got it, but it's wrapped up. I've absolutely wrapped it up, and it's in a filing cabinet that I've locked. Because it's like I don't want to go near it because it creeps me out. The only reason why it creeps me out is when I had it on display in the museum, I was forever walking through and blaming everybody else because I kept saying to everybody, "Who keeps moving it?
It did it when we were there, didn't it? It kept doing it when we were there, and it were like, well, we're all in this room."
Yeah.
And it's
who the hell's done that?
And it's moved again.
Yeah.
In fact, it was when it was sat down, and when we went past and looked back, it had stood up, hadn't it?
Stood up. That's it. It stood up.
Yeah.
It stood up, and it was like, and because we'd all been together, because it's like, I know when I walked through the little room and I saw it stood up, I was like, right, and I was looking at everybody going, well, we're all here, we were all upstairs, we were all talking, I know all the doors were locked, nobody could get in or out, and I'm like, oh, it's started. So when I brought it home, because I like to give it a rest, I brought it home, and I've wrapped up in this blanket, and I've sealed it in this thing, and I know how I laid it, but I can't be bothered to undo the drawer to see if it's moving because I'm like, no, you're in my home. I don't want this. Just please stay there. So yeah, that's a case that we're going to talk about. we're going to talk about that and a few other dolls and doll icons and all sorts, as well as the book that goes along with all that.
Yeah,
because there's a book being prepared for that. So you can see how taking small steps initially, looking at sort of saying, if you're religious, you can do your prayers. Mantras are another one I say to people if they're not quite sure. There's certain things you can say, certain things you can do in the morning, things like this. Those mantras are basically set up to give you confidence to sort of control it, barriers. I mean, I've come across one house where the one was so she'd had a haunting, and it was basically like a woodpecker tapping, where it goes and she couldn't figure out. So, and what she ended up doing was buying big bags of salt, and she was putting them across the doorways. She was putting them across the carpets. It was like all over. And I'm like, where did you get the salt idea from? And she goes, well, I watched this program on television once, and it was they'd put salt around. And I said, well, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's a good thing to do. I said, but did you do everything else with it? Yeah. Not just. She goes, oh no, I put salt on. And she went, it seemed to work. And I looked at her and I went, well, that's clearly because she'd built up her strength from what she thought the salt was doing, but actually it was her doing it, you know. I didn't have the heart to tell her, so I kept saying, oh no, well, you keep that salt going then, that's fair enough.
It's a bit like
and
anything,
it worked for her.
It's a bit like, I mean, the salt's just salt, but once you bless it, it becomes something different.
Yeah.
It's like, it's useless without you doing something weird. It's like, and on opposite end of the scale, it's like a Ouija board. A Ouija board don't work on its own.
Nope.
You've got to participate, haven't you? At some point, it may move when you're not touching it. I've seen that 1,000 times. It may move and it may do things that, and you're not even touching it. But the intent for you to do it is there, and that's all it needs is that intent.
Yeah, I always talk about intent anyway. I mean, I think it's a big thing. It's if your intentions are correct and your intentions are right anywhere in life, you achieve far much more. You get things done a lot better, particularly when you're dealing with these things. Her intention with the salt was to clear and to soften it down, and it worked. The fact she was doing it wrong, but it didn't matter. But if she's listening, I apologise to her. I should have probably told her, but it was working for her. And I'm thinking, well, if that's working, that's working. I'm not going to change her mind.
That's the thing as well, Ralph. It is. We see it constantly, is a mismatch of ideas as an effective, solid solution, and that's never going to happen. I mean, you see people, don't you? They've got a crucifix on, and then they've got a Star of David, and they've got an upside down pentacle, and they've got Thor's whatever it is, and they've got all these different things. A classic one I saw was. It were a guy and his partner or whatever, and one had a crucifix and the other one had a satanic Bible, and that was the approach, and it was like, this is just completely ridiculous. I mean, opposing things it's never going to happen. Basic magnet theory. It's just not going to do it, But there's a lot of mixed ideas, and
you talk about magnets there, Steve. But I actually use magnets. I give them to kids. If kids are having issues and kids are having problems, I explain to them that a magnet's got like this invisible force field.
Yeah.
And certainly in the way I work, when I'm in the room and I'm repelling energy, I'm trying to move it out, I feel that energy. So I'm kind of like pushing against the wind, if you want to do it that way. But the way I actually view it is, I'm like the opposite. The end of a magnet, that when you put them together, sometimes they click, or the other one is they push apart, don't they? And I that's how I deal. I'm that pushy part. I'm a pushy one. So I always say to kids, take the magnet and put it near you, but the belief is that's a force field, but it's my signal to any energy to say that's my calling card.
Yeah.
And it's just the way I do it. Now, I've done it with magnets all over, and I've been surprised at the way it's worked. Yeah. And then now I have this real belief in the fact that it's another energy force that's invisible that actually is a signal, and it's a way of saying, move out. The bigger and stronger the magnet, the better. Yeah. So with kids, I always get them to carry it.
Yeah.
Or I'll get them, because your body's got small amounts of iron and stuff in it as well, and it's quite good because they wear magnetic bracelets and stuff, so it's actually quite a good and healthy thing. But for me, it's worked. For me, it's done well. Don't get me wrong, I'm talking about low level energy. I'm not talking about high energy.
It's that beginning. I think all that sort of stuff works because it hasn't established that contractual agreement yet. Or it hasn't, you haven't broken the rules. It's tempting you in it all the time, these things, It's time not to be blasé in these situations either. You have to accept that, once you know that things are happening around you that shouldn't be happening, then being blasé about it is, well, I don't believe in any of this stuff and all that. Don't usually help situation, does it?
No, because I always talk about this thing, and I know I've said this to you before, but I always sort of say to everybody else it's a story unless you're living it. When you're living it, it's real. It becomes very frightening. It becomes very real.
Absolutely.
But to everybody else, it's a story. And I always find the guys that go, well, I'm not bothered, it's the wife, she's the one. And I look at him and go, well, if you weren't that bothered, you wouldn't be bothered bringing me in. So it's got to you somewhere.
Yeah.
And even if they say, well, I'm only doing it for the wife, I'm like, no, you're not, because you'd have told your wife it's rubbish. You'd have stood over it. So I understand.
Well, there is one thing, Ralph. By the time we've left at that stage,
yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah. We changed the thought patterns. Yeah, it's. I think to try and keep this on a certain footing, we're dealing here with saying to people, deal with it. If you can deal with it yourself, this is all nice and steady. Before we come in, it's better for them because you get more out of it. I mean, you get more. You get more from yourself as well. You build your own confidence. You can build your own things. And to be honest, 99% of the time, these hauntings, they're friendly. They're not trying to become anything bad or trying to create badness for you neither. Most of them are just it's and a lot of them don't last long.
No.
Within a day or two, it's gone.
It's down to how you react, isn't it? If you start screaming and shouting, it'll do it even more. If you start, if you ignore it completely, usually this dissipates out, and you're getting them, because it's kind of what's point in it doing it if you're just gonna brush it off? It don't have any effect, It tends to really be more focused on one person, doesn't it? Although it'll display things early stages to a lot of people to get them all convinced or whatever, there'll always be that one person that it's kind of, you can see that we're going to be getting this is targeting now. It's not, it's done with its displaying and it's moving on to it's this particular person, which is, again, it's another showing.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's a lot further on, a lot further
because it ramps up, and it's I think in these early stages, these early days of a haunting in particular, it's obviously once you've recognised what signs there are in the place, and then saying, well, how do I deal with it? And you can start to deal with it. You've also got to then recognise when it's becoming a little bit out of hand, when it's becoming a little bit more of an annoyance, and that's when you kind of like step up. But I always say to everybody, no matter what you do, keep calm. Don't. The calmer you are, the more you can hold on to yourself. It's frightening. Don't get me wrong, because I would challenge anybody that says I'm never frightened. I'm sorry. I've been in some very simple scenarios and it's freaked me out. I think it's a natural instinct to be frightened initially. Once I've started,
I think it's.
I'm going to say, once I've started dealing with it and I start to understand it, the frightened comes down, and then I'm just on edge to make sure everything's going okay. But it leads to that. But go on, carry on.
I think that's the thing. Is there's nobody just going to go, oh yeah, if they see something move, or they hear a voice that's not in that household talk to them, say the name, or something shouting from another room. That's a class one, isn't it? Where conversations in other rooms that you just can't quite make out. Or something upstairs, so when you go upstairs, it triggers something downstairs, so you're up and down, following nothing.
Well, I one of our other shows, by the way, is, and we're going to talk about levels of activity and how you can distinguish between soft levels and then higher up, and how it's moving up that level. The way I'm going to put it over is, if you see a child doing drawings when they're young, the baby steps, but by the time that child becomes an adult, it can become the most fantastic painter. Those skills get better. And a ghost is the same. It can start off baby steps, simple stuff, and then as it's progressing, it can get better and better and better and better and better, and it can fine tune it to a point where we talk about top level stuff, And it starts off with some hauntings in some cases. I know this is going to terrify people. That's my thing, but it can get out of hand. I'm thankful that 99.9% of the cases don't, Steve, do they? Most of the time, it's dealt with, it's sorted, off we go.
Well, we don't ring each other on every case because we've never been for phone. It's usually when we ring it, it'll be, I've had 6 inquiries this week or whatever. 2 of them were not at all. Other 4, I've just told them to, take control of the thing, blah blah blah. Simple things to do, and then usually that's it. We'll check back in with them or whatever, or they'll check in with us and say, oh yeah, fine now, things are great. If we don't hear off them, great, fine. Generally, it's because they just moved on with their life. It's a little hiccup in what's been going off, But there is very few cases that are horrendous cases, but they still happen, and it's usually because them early stages have been either provoked or encouraged. I would, either way, provoked or encouraged, usually leads to something far worse than, like we said on other programmes, just a human spirit, very, very little power to kind of do anything in a sense, just enough to kind of alert you that, and then usually somebody will say, they've got it, it's this or it's that. They'll do it, and that'll be the end of it. It's that believing. Although we believe there are things there, we've not to believe what we think is there in a sense. You need to be sure of what's there before you do any kind of interaction or anything really, But if you can catch it at early stages, which like you said, most people can, it's nice and easy, just a little thing.
I think the other thing as well, Steve, is to try and not over dramatise it. At the end of the day, if don't get me wrong, it is freaky if you see something move. Yes, it is, but you've got to look at it in its context and say, well, it moved across a table. It didn't do anything other than just move across the table, and whilst that's frightening in itself, you've kind of got to bring yourself back down to going, well, was that showing me something? Was that trying to just get my attention? Was it, and I'm not going to take it away from anybody that sits down to me and says to me, it was awful seeing it move. Yeah, I understand that, but given a bit of time and a bit of thought pattern, you've got to go, well, didn't hurt you, it was showing, because I always think of kids when I deal with this. When a kid wants your attention, the first thing it's going to do is shout at you. If you ignore it, it then might tap you or grab you or that. If after a while it's had enough and it gets into a tantrum mode, it's liable to throw things, And so therefore you've got, same with a haunting, it can sometimes have been that fed up, it'll actually get hold of an object and just move it for the sheer hell of going, now I'll get your attention. But it hasn't got any evil intent, it's just saying, look at me, You know, look who I am.
If it picks if a glass comes flying across the shelf and it hits you on the head, then immediately stop what you're doing and do nothing.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Just get out of the way. You know, because again, it's down to intent. Like you've said, if you're observing someone moving, then the likelihood is that it's some human thing that's just trying to get some attention. You know, and you can quickly resolve all that, like we've said. But if it's directed at you, and it's going to hurt you, or it could possibly hurt you, then it's a different ball game altogether. Because, like we were saying before, even if they're coming back as a ghost form, if they've never hurt you in your life, why would they do it in the death? You know, you know. And I know we said that about that. We could say that at other ends as well, is that there's abusive people and that have been terrible all their lives. They don't change when they die. The spirit don't change. They're who they are. The soul, you know, all these things don't change. And if it's a family person, you would know them. You would know. That's the key thing, is you would know. Because if it's family or whatever, they're not going to be scary. They're not going to be, unless they're a scary person in their life. And that case is that they're attacking you then, because they would have attacked you and they're going to do the same again. But like 99% of any spirit that shows itself or whatever, or moves from a thing, is just that little bit of attention, just enough.
Tell you
know,
what amazes me about a lot of this is you are correct. It's generally family and that's around you, or it's somebody that knows you that's there. But it's amazing how frightening people get, and they don't sit down and think, is it my grandfather? Was it my mother? Was it a friend of mine? Was it? Because we don't know each other enough. That's the thing. It's funny. I used to do this thing I used to do a stand-up show, and somebody would say, unless you give me his name, I'm not recognise it. Then I'd look and go, yeah, but what about all the other information I've given you? We don't introduce each other as, every time I see you, Steve, I don't say, oh, hi, I'm Ralph. I don't do it. I just naturally go in and start talking. And people don't see that. They go, oh no, it must introduce itself. It must. I was like, they haven't got time, you know. So Grandad may come in. Grandad may be a bit grumpy, like you've said, and he may slam a door. He may chuck an object. But that's his way. But it's thinking that people don't sit and go, oh, actually, yeah, Grandad used to do that. Or that was his favourite cup that moved. You know. Because like most haunted, I say to people, where's the most haunted place you can go? And usually it's a graveyard, which we all know is not so. Or they'll say a castle or and I go, no, your own home. And they all go, what do you mean? I go, well, your own home's more haunted than anywhere else because your family's there. They want to be around you.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Except my home's probably a little bit more haunted, as Holly will protest. Because
but you've only yourself to blame. No, I want to joke.
Because the amount of haunted objects, which is another programme, I know, but the amount of haunted objects I've got and the amount of stuff I've dealt with, but I've found this world very, very fascinating, the whole thing. I'm always a bit sceptical, no matter what we do, when it comes to a haunted property. I'm one for saying to people, you can help yourself, you can do things, and there are ways and means out there that you can use, including smudging and things like this that you can do. So there are things that you can do, but there's also that little edge of why is it doing that? Why it doesn't just start for no reason.
And it doesn't stop if you don't give it a solution. You know, so if it is a human spirit, if it is family and it's not going to, you know, whatever, it's just needing to convey something to you, it'll keep going till it does. But once you do get it, that'll be it. It'll stop, so you'll know. And other thing is as well is that you'll know family members, you'll know even you know, manifestations of figures and things like that or whatever. Your family don't come in shadows. Your family don't come as dark shadows. Why would they? You know, They don't come as. I mean, you've seen it yourself, Ralph. You can get a manifestation in front of you and think, my God, that's such and such. But then you'll look and there'll be a fault. The face kind of in, or it might be obscured, or there'll be a bit missing, or I suppose your survival instincts tell you deep down in your soul, sort of thing.
Correct.
That's not right. That's not right. And you get that warning then within, don't you? So if things happen to you, your body and everything happens. If it's your family and that, them things don't happen. Yeah, there might be a shock of seeing someone, there's my nan and she's been dead 30 years, how can she be stood in front of me kind of thing, But she's not going to sit down and say, now then, let's catch up.
Yeah, no, you're right.
The likelihood is she ain't going to say it. Maybe a word, if that, but they don't come as dark shadows, or that's is a misconception. People believe that these shadows are, anything's dark for a reason, or it'd shine bright, wouldn't it?
And again,
and there is a massive difference.
Huge difference. There is a massive difference. A huge difference. I always say to everybody, and you can be frightened and you can sense it, but there's a frightened, and then there's what I call fearful frightening, and the fearful one is the one where it's not right, there's something else. So we can all have a shocker and a thing like this, and you get it and you're over it. But if there's an underlying thing inside you that goes, this is something else, it generally it is, and it's amazing how, with the programs we're going to be doing, Steve, how we're going to show and talk to people about homes that have either increased in value because of the spirit activity, or have just dissipated completely because we've just done something simple, And I'm going to tell everybody now, while we're talking about this, that your home doesn't have to be 100 years old to be haunted. It can be 6 months old. Or in the case of I know I've said it before, but the fire lady that went on the fire one, that house was only, I think it was 9 months old. A brand new property, basically. So it shows everybody that it doesn't matter, but it's when you look at the circumstances of how it's happened, then you look and go, now I understand why it escalated, why it went so far,
I think you've got to be careful as well there's reasons that we've gone over or why things can possibly be there, but you've also got to look at if your intentions are dark. So if you like murders, you like horror, you like this, you like that, you like all these dark things, and you start putting these little ornaments up of dark things and all this kind of stuff, don't be surprised if something starts happening. I'm not saying it'll happen to everybody and that, but just don't be surprised if it does. We get so many people are like, really? And it's like, well, an upside down pentagon with a statue of Baphomet underneath it, and you're using it as you sort of your incense candles and stuff. It's not correct, what you think. And they'll say, but I bought it at Wilco's, or I bought it at this. And it's like, no matter where you bought it, your intention.
I had, it's funny you go down that route, because it's a case I did a few years back, but I had a woman ring me and she was talking about her daughter, about how her daughter's, she was Gothic, she would always wear black, she would always have black makeup, always have all these things she'd always talk about, and then the daughter decided to have her room painted in a particular style, so you can imagine when I got there and she was going, we hear noises, we hear things, even when the door's shut and there's nobody in there, that room is. So I undid the door, right? So the first thing that struck me was black carpet, black curtains, right? Black furniture, and then they put chrome ornaments around, and a big mirror, big reflective mirror. And I looked and I went in and I went, oh my God, talk about death. And she went, what do you mean? I went, it's definitely death. And she'd done that same thing that you said. She'd bought a candle and in it was an inverted pentagram, but underneath it she'd carved in an upside down cross, which she did not know the significance of that. She didn't understand that, and I'm like, so she thought that was like it's the evil thing, and I'm like, no, that's not the evil thing. The pentagram and the black room is where your issue is. And she's going, really? I went, yeah. And I said, what does your daughter look like? Well, when our daughter came through, Steve, it was like she had rings in her nose, and there were dragons, and all that kind of. And I went, a mindset is one issue.
Yeah.
But the fact that the girl was into horrors, was into stuff, anything Halloweenian, anything like she was into, and I went, the environment is being created in that room. I said, there's no wonder. I said, the first thing you need to do is undo the curtains, put a nice bright light in, and get rid of most of the black.
Yeah. It's kind of like it, and I understand there's trends and fashions, and like. I've been a punker mod. I've been everything as a kid. I had all these different styles and stuff. And kids are kids. They're entitled to do all this. But I think as parents as well, you should have a guiding line that says, look, that ain't going to do us any good. And explain it why. If you come from a Christian background, it don't matter what interpretations people have outside of that faith. But people will say, an inverted pentagram don't mean this and it don't mean that. With that faith, it does. And it's proved time and time again of a cases because all these things are involved in it, And I get people have got their opinions, but solve it without that then. And we'll see you in 6 months. Give us a ring then, But it's that. Allowing people to do things. If it's like my house. If I've got 5 lads in the house, they know not to be messing with no Ouija boards and messing about with no this, that, and other things and whatever. And they're quite up on it, And I don't drill it into them or whatever. It's just I might make comments on programs and stuff. I might say, oh well, that doesn't happen like that because it's this. There's things like that. But I think you have to have a control of your environment as well, where you've got to say that, look, this interest you've got in death or darkness and negative things and that, it's going to have an effect on all of us. We all live together and stuff, and it's not comfortable as watching you go down this path. I understand fashion and music and all these things, but it's what they then lead on to through media influence. It's. There's many variations of a Ouija board that people don't recognise it is one. Like if you look, there was a game a few years ago. I went into school over it and had a chat with him about it, and they'd got a couple of students who were playing a Charlie game, which were just 2 cross pencils on a piece of paper, yes and no. That's the Ouija board. It don't matter. Because it hasn't got all letters and fancy designs on and all these things. It's still the same thing. The intent of the purpose of it is to communicate.
Funny you should say that, Steve, but I've actually got a board game, right? I took it off a parent, and the board game is called The Exorcist. It's the Exorcist board game. And I looked at it and I went, I said, great. It's a great film and it's based on things, but when you look at it and you go, why do you want to bring a game into your property, into your house that's got that such negative vibe to it, and all the cards and all the things are all, and she's going, well we didn't, and I went, because your intent was to have it as a negative thing, that's what you've invited in. You're not helping it. You're compounding it. You're making it worse. And I took it away from. I've got it at home, and I looked at it and I thought, why would somebody even develop a game like that? It's just crazy. Don't get me wrong. I know at Halloween that people go on these spooky nights and they do all this stuff, and it's all meant to be fun. But at least Halloween is based on a proper ceremony and a proper belief system, and it's fine on that level. But we've twisted it to make it a bit more fun, which is what all the lanterns and everything are about. But when you look at it on that level, that's fine. But to take something serious like that and go, that's what I'm dealing with, it's like something else. And we are going to be dealing with those kind of issues with that kind of thing a bit later on in the other programs we're doing, because we're going to really get into the nut and bolts of a lot of different types of how shall we say it, backgrounds of Satanism and devil worship and all the other bits and bobs, because we need to look at it, along with
these. But like we're saying as well, is all these things we're talking about are all personal experience stuff. The cases that come, it's just we can guarantee that most activity when it starts is similar. There are similar traits within most activity when it starts that we look for. But, that can always change. There's different cases every time, isn't there? Everybody's different. And I always tend to find as well is that if it's going to be a more severe case, the people who you're dealing with are very difficult at the beginning to get them to come out with truth. But again, that's another program, because there's obviously influences and things that can happen to people.
That's true. No, you're right. And it's often, but coming back to where we are with this, it's the first few programs we've done is about recognising and understanding what types of things are going on around you. This sort of program is to sort of say, look, early on you can do quite a few things and put your mindset, and also put any energy that's out there into a frame of saying, please step back, or I'm uncomfortable with, can you please, because I would, 99% they'll walk away, or they won't necessarily give away with it, but they'll ease up, but it's interesting, because we're going to be delving in the next few weeks over certain things that have gone on and what to look for. And I certainly want to go over some cases with you to sort of say, look at this. This is how it started. This is how it developed. This is how it went. As you know, we're going to be filming as well as putting books and all the other bits and bobs to it. But it's going to be a case of saying how it's developing. And that's what I'm trying to get done with it, really. But I think it's quite nice, because anybody listening in, we're looking at producing some little cases and things to, if somebody wants to buy one, it's a protection thing, little simple things, but also simple instructions onto how you can look after things, what you can do yourself before you get to us.
That's it. We're not going to give people solutions further down hauntings or cases and stuff. We're not going to provide you with solutions further down. If it's gone beyond early stages or certain stages, then there's not really much you can do about it, because it's probably, and people aren't going to like this, but it's probably you that's caused it. Or somebody within your family unit or whatever that's caused it, or is causing it, but then you're a lot further down the line, aren't you? The things are established, so it's a different ball game then. But catch it early, dismiss it, do whatever, right at the beginning, and you'll be fine. It's really, most noises you hear are like, people say, I've heard a creaking or this, that and that, going, the floorboards and heating systems and all these things and that. They happen, they do happen. But along that as well is, we live within a spiritual realm anyways. These things are around us all the time, good and bad, constantly. So sometimes it might not be eating.
Well, that window or door that's opened might not quite be what you think. I think it's it's trying to keep a rational head and a common sense value on a lot of stuff. But certainly, what we're going to do, because we'll close the program off. But I over the next few weeks, we'll start to look at some cases. We'll certainly start talking about types of hauntings and types of things that go on, along with some myths and legends that are going to come into all this as well, Steve, because it's all mixed up. I know at the moment we're early days, but it's going to develop. It's going to develop. Anyway, thanks very much for your time.
It's just this. I was just going to say, it's just we want to kind of gear a sensible approach to dealing with something. That's what it is basically, and the further we go down with programs, then it'll just open more up, you know. But one thing we'll not be telling you is what you've seen on telly.
No, this is real stuff.
General rubbish that you see, you know. And I think that's where most people's fears come from at early stages. Is the minute they hear a creaking door, you know, it automatically goes back to Dracula lifting coffin lid, or it goes to something, and then their imaginations start going, and it becomes worse than it really is, you know. So, but fabulous.
If you again low level, but if you want to disrupt an energy, you want to stop it doing things, then buy these.
That was interesting, weren't it?
God, you see that? It cut us off. Did you see that? It's because I'm moving on. I'm moving on to a better level now.
It were me. You said disrupted.
Yeah. Disrupt the energy. Yeah.
Like that.
And that's I know. It's amazing when it kicks in like that. It's just something else. I mean, I used to work with a lot of film crews, you know, and a lot of the film crews, the batteries would die, lights wouldn't work, all sorts of. And here we go again. Look, we're doing it again, but. Coming back to what I was saying, on a simple level, I used to say to people, buy these night lights. Put in a night light so you can physically see that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But also, with a night light on, that's giving you some protection, but it's also telling the other energy, I'm now starting to protect myself. So you're putting another barrier up, and that's an intention again.
That's what you see. But like you said with that, is if you can catch it in them early stages and use a solution that you're comfortable using, and you know that's me. It's no good saying I'm gonna do Christian prayers. It's no good doing that if you don't believe in it. It's absolutely pointless. You might as well walk around reading a story. You know, there's no point in it at all. Like you say, it's got to go back to what you believe in. And even people say, I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that. If you're worried to the point where you think something's haunting you, you must believe in something. You know,
it's there. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Exorcist Diaries with Steve Hemingway and myself, Ralph Keaton. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the signs of a haunting, and if you're keen to hear more on the subject of hauntings, join us next time and we'll take a look at the subject in a more depth of how it affects you. In the meantime, check out our website at extraordinarium.co.uk or my website ralphkeaton.co.uk for all our links to shows, videos, resources and more.